There we go. All right, so you were saying something about pedophiles?
Yep. The night I felt most like a pedophile. So, alright, so I like to go out on garbage day and collect scrap metal around my neighborhood. And I had a tendency, obviously, to do it really late at night. So I was walking around late at night. That's something to keep in mind. And
Like what time?
this one was probably around like 10:30, 11. Although I have done it before at like 1 in the morning, before I got a full-time job and I had to be up at like 6 a.m. Those were the days, let me tell you. But, so I also have this thing where if I see a piece of trash on the road or something, I'll pick it up. I'm going right by people's trash cans and recycling bins anyway, so if it's like, oh, just a piece of trash or a piece of cardboard, piece of paper, I'll go pick it up and put it in the trash can recycling bin. I don't know if that's illegal. I don't know if it's trespassing or something like trespassing because I'm not paying for the garbage service. They are, but, you know, no one's going to call the cops on you for that. So one night I was crossing an intersection in my neighborhood and I see a pink piece of cardboard on the ground. Now I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, since I'm passing by it, I'll pick it up and throw it out in the next recycling bin I see. So I go, I pick it up without looking, and after walking about 2 feet, I'm like, say, what is this thing anyway? And I swear I had no clue who JoJo Siwa was. All I see is some bleach blonde, prepubescent girl smiling back at me, and it says right across the top, like, six-pack girls briefs. And this is just like, okay, panic. I'm walking around late at night carrying an empty package of girls briefs. I could either drop it right now.
It almost makes it worse.
I could either drop it right now, hope no one sees and comes out to investigate, or I could continue going the next 15 feet to this guy's recycling bin, slip it in, and hope nobody sees and comes outside to investigate. And people would. I've had people, like, you know, someone throws out a big piece of aluminum and it's just sitting next to their trash can. I've grabbed it and I've seen people, like, up in their windows just kind of looking at me.
So there's precedent for this. There could have been someone watching.
There could have been someone watching. And let me tell you, if somebody... Okay, this is also just the nature of the suburbanite.
Mom, I put my feet here.
Yeah, this is just the nature of the suburbanite. Where if you're going around picking up litter, like, oh, sir, I saw this paper cup on your driveway. Ah, thank you for picking it up, young man. Oh, by the way, I put it in your trash can. You what?
A lot of NIMBYism.
Yep. So, you know, where was I? I slip it in their trash can, and let me tell you, if anyone's going to call the cops on you, you know, if you call 911 late at night and be like, some guy I don't know just slipped something into my trash can. It's this, you know, paper cup. I want you to come out here and arrest him for trespassing. You know, the 911 operator is going to be like, oh, sure, sir. We'll get somebody out there right away. You just sit tight now. And then, like, 45 minutes later, the cops show up like, all right, well, looks like they're gone now. You have a nice evening, sir. Now, if you call 911 late at night and tell them that some weird adult that you don't know is wandering the neighborhood and just slipped an empty package of little girls' underwear into your trash can, and I really did not want to have to call my parents from jail at like, 2 in the morning, whenever they would let me get my one phone call, whatever, and be like, hey, so I'm in jail. I just want to like set the story straight before anything makes the papers, or you see anything on Nextdoor, or anything like that. Well, and thankfully nothing happened. I just slipped it in and buried it under a few pieces of cardboard that were in there and nonchalantly walked away.
I think what's more disturbing is the fact that parents would allow their minor to be the face of like that kind of like advertising.
And what was this product?
Okay, it was like little girls' briefs. I'm guessing it wasn't like babies, but I'm guessing it was for like youngins.
Youngins.
It's the best word I could come up with right there.
Like teenage children, or like toddler clothes or something like that.
Probably younger than that. I don't know, maybe like 8, 9.
I don't know. Oh, is that preteen? Something like that? Preteen?
I think it's even before that.
Well, it would have to be. Well, if we're being strict about mathematics, it is technically preteen. I don't know what the marketing people would call that age demographic, but
yeah,
creepy, definitely creepy.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of things that makes it a nice, creepy, creepy anecdote there.
And I think you're right too. Is like obviously this JoJo Siwa girl, and again, I didn't find out who she was or what she did until well after that event. But I mean, yeah, I kind of think like.
So you looked it up when you got home.
More like several
we
weeks
might want
later.
to take that part out. All right. Yeah. I think so. We can go one of two ways here. We can continue down that line if you guys want, or we can talk about kind of the 3 topics we considered getting into. What do you guys think?
I'll go with the 3 topics.
Okay, let's go with the 3 topics. I don't know if it'll be as exciting as what we just heard there. I don't know if anything we say.
We can make it exciting.
I stand corrected. Okay, I didn't know. All right, let's get some more flavor into this. All right, so we have 3 topics prepared here, or general things we want to talk about. They are respectively the idea of ride sharing with cars, the idea of cars getting too powerful, and the idea of sustainability in cars, I think is a general term for it. So did I get those 3 right?
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, we can go any order you like. What do you guys think?
Let's talk about the ride sharing first, because I remember you were doing that in our test reel.
Yeah. Sure. I think A over here, he had some really good, I think we can just go by initial if we want. I think A had some really good initial comments about it. Unless, did you want me to start? Or I just kind of threw the spotlight.
Why don't you set it up?
Sure.
I'm not sure how we're going to approach this.
Yeah. So the idea of rideshare coming up pretty recently in the history of humanity and cars in general, and its comparison to public transit, its comparison to traditional taxi, its comparison to owning a car, and of course the fact of regionally where is its place. So where do you guys think its place is within the auto industry as a whole?
Well, here's the thing. No place.
No place.
If you want to treat it, I think the reason I say no place is because people keep treating it as a job. It's not a job. You're never going to make your money back if you buy a car. One time I was curious just to see the requirements, and I looked up like Uber and Lyft's requirements, and your car needs to be like 6 years old, or it was like a 2012 model, so at the time 6 years old or newer. And that's probably as a safety thing. They want you to have like safety equipment and also reliability in that. But even pre-pandemic, if you had to buy a newer car, you were never going to make your money back Ubering if you had to buy a car like that. So a big problem with people treating it as a job is you can't just go out and buy some, $2,000 beater car and then, if you make $3,000 a year or whatever, oh, you've made $1,000. It's like, no, you got to go buy like a $15,000 used car pre-pandemic, and how much are you really going to make from that?
See, that's an interesting. So, I like how you brought up the perspective of the independent contractors, the actual rideshare drivers. I hate how they're classified as independent contractors, but you know, they get to do what they want when you run that company. But uh, the idea there. So, let's break that down actually, just with kind of an example. So you mentioned some rough numbers there on how much the car would cost and how much someone could expect to make it.
This is when I looked it up pre-pandemic, so those numbers have even become even more
Probably
inflated since
yeah.
then.
And
a $2,000 used car is basically like a rusted out shitbox now.
And it probably wouldn't be something you could Uber in.
No,
at this point,
absolutely not.
Right? So
it's either too old or has no frame.
So yeah, so you've looked into this yourself, and you at some point decided it probably wasn't even worth it for you to do?
Oh, I was
At
just
the
looking
time,
at it
or
out
were
of
you just curious?
curiosity. I wasn't even interested in it. I just wanted to see what the requirements were.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't do it for like wear and tear on the car. Because
Yeah.
like I would never use my own
Oh no.
car for that. So you would have to do it.
You'd have to do it with an external, like
Yeah.
something else. I don't know. What do you? I like how you bring that up. How both of you brought that up. It's an interesting consideration. I don't think I can't speak for. Maybe we should get someone who has driven for those companies before and see what they think. As far as cost, right? It begs the question. Then why would anyone do it?
I did have a friend in college who kind of pointed me out to, I kept saying, it's not a real job, you're never going to make your money back. And he said, well, consider, I'm not calling you out or anything, I'm actually agreeing with you, just in case you happen to be listening. But it's like, well, yeah, you're going to have financial problems in like 4 months, but if you Uber, you're eating tonight. And I think that might be an allure to
It's like an
people is
immediate.
Well, and the other thing too, and it kind of goes along with them being like a contractor, is you can kind of, I'm pretty sure you can like turn it off and on whether you're available or Uber.
Yeah, you can.
So
I think you can.
it's not like a job with set hours. You can kind of choose your hours.
Yeah.
So what ends
Right.
up happening is either there's some people who just do it for a bit of extra money because they have some time, but the people who would like rely on it like as a job, they'd have to work like long hours to make it
Mhm.
work.
Yeah, I feel like to do a proper analysis, I'd want to make one of those videos where we run the math, like, wear and tear on this car, like what is the
Yeah, 'cause
best
it's
car
not
to,
like
what is the
like
best car to
checker
Uber
cabs
in?
where you can run them like most cars like 24 hours and like
Mhm.
just abuse them like
They're just designed that, yeah.
Also,
like,
think about it. What's the end of a life for a taxi? It's usually 400,000 or 500,000 miles, and they had a tendency to buy like old Crown Vic police interceptors at like 150, 200,000. They don't care about those cars. Like nobody has to.
and those cars can take the abuse.
Oh yeah,
Those cars are designed, yeah, they're just built different, right?
Yeah. yeah, they're literally built
Yeah,
different than
they're-
like any other modern car.
Yeah, they were built for, the taxi industry. They were built, I wouldn't say they were explicitly,
Well, they
like the
were like-
OEMs didn't have that in mind, but
They were
it was
body on
chosen.
frame like a truck, except they were a car. They had like low stress engines, and the design like was largely unchanged for like the last 20 years. Like same platform, engine, transmission.
And this actually goes beautifully into your topic about sustainability. Let's segue into that. So, kind of combining those two topics, sustainability and cars. So, what do you want to say about that? Let's actually continue that. So you you are bringing up how some of these taxis are better equipped, and they were built to kind of last longer. Like, and so how do you compare that to kind of maybe perhaps an electric vehicle or a fuel cell vehicle, or some of the other modern vehicles?
Well, a car like that, if you take care of it like properly and just drive it normally, those will last like decades. You know, like normal use, just one car. So if you get the right one, you know, it's pretty big, pretty safe. You know, when you get it,
Mm-hmm.
it should last a while. But
Eventually, you'll amass a big enough collection of license plates to patch the floor. So,
yeah. So, well, and plus those with the frame too, you know, are you're
Rust
not gonna
is
like
less
the
of an
car's
issue.
not gonna collapse down when you jack it up, you know, like a Chrysler minivan or something. But it'd have to be really bad at that point. But like, you know, compare that to like, you know, even like something like a Prius or a Tesla, where after like what, like 8-10 years, yeah, they'll have like a warranty for like 8-10 years, but after that time's up, typically so is like the battery, kind of like a phone or a laptop or something.
You mentioned low stress engines, because I think the 4.6 started off as like 215 horsepower and maxed out, at least in the Panthers, at like 255 horsepower. In the Police Interceptor, there was the 300 horsepower Marauder engine that was also 4 valves, so a little bit of a different animal.
Yeah, the Cobra engine.
Yeah, but low stress engines, the funny thing is a lot of modern engines too they're running a lot smaller engines, turbocharged, forced induction. That's a high stress engine. They don't actually run this, but I think static compression on a Prius is like 13.5 to 1.
But the other thing too is like, if you know, a car like that, like if you need like, you know, to do a bit of engine work on like a Crown Vic up to a certain point, if you know, you can justify that if it's a nice car and you've otherwise taken care of it. It's not, you know, you can manage that, but like once it gets to the point where you have to put all new like batteries in or whatever, like that, the car is mechanically totaled at that point, like every time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, then you have to get a new car.
Well, that's also one of the same reasons too. You still see a lot of like 80s and 90s Tahoes, Suburbans, F-150s, the square body trucks, even like the Dodge Rams, is because, you know, not only were they just built to last, but they're easy to work on.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, Chevy small block, you can go buy parts at any auto parts store in the country. You walk in and say, I need to rebuild my Chevy 350. They're like, here you go. I need to rebuild my Buick 350. Here you go. They'll accidentally hand you the Chevy kit, and then you get to go back and say, no, I need a Buick. And be like, what? You could really throw them off and say, I need to rebuild a Mopar 350. They'll be like, what? But, you know, I love doing that to auto parts stores.
Definitely need to bring you in the next time I need something in my car repaired.
I'd like to. I need a head gasket set for my Rambler 327.
Yeah,
you mean your Chevy 327? No, my Rambler 327.
Yeah, the ecosystem. So yeah, the ecosystem of the ecosystem is important too, right? So like you mentioned, and when I say ecosystem, I don't mean like the biological one. I meant the ecosystem of like cars and people and things that can work on your car and the stuff around it that helps it last longer, right? The environment around that helps it last longer. If you were to let's ask a different question. If you were to recommend someone buy a car, and this will be directed at you actually, since this is your topic, what would you? Let's say the budget's 25,000, right? Something reasonable, maybe 25-30,000, right? So, what would you recommend the consumer today to buy, and what would you recommend? What would that be for like 2010? Knowing what you know now, what do you think?
I feel like that's kind of broad.
It's meant to be broad. Like if you
Like-
had to kind of make a if you were giving advice to someone, let's say giving advice to me, um, what would you say?
I mean, they stopped making the Crown Vics, or the Grand Marquis would be like the civilian version at that time, and the town cars in 2011. So if I were in a position back then to buy a new car, and it was the right like timing, I might get one of those and just ride it out, until like
Until the sun implodes.
yeah, until like the industry is like totally different, then reassess at that point.
Right. You might end up being force upgraded.
Yeah.
Which kind of also brings up a good point. They have the capability, unless I'm seriously misunderstanding something, to make a very basic electric car. But they don't. Like, you don't need a touch screen. Do you know how many decades we've had golf carts? Like, I've seen some old, like, cars from, like, the 40s and 50s in junkyards that could run perfectly fine if you, like, dropped an electric motor under the engine bay instead of the engine, because they're, like, and I'm not saying you have to have, like, manual steering, but, they're, like, manual everything. Even, there were, like, trucks, like I mentioned, the square bodies and the old F-150s. You could drop an electric motor into one of those, they'd run just fine, and you could keep them basic. But they don't do that now.
Well, the two things. First is like, that's also part of the sustainability thing, is like, who wants to use like a 15, 20-year-old computer in their car, or even like 10 years old, to like control basically everything? Because that's what it is, like an iPad or something. Like, who wants to use a 10, 15-year-old iPad to like, change the temperature and stuff like that? But the reason why they cram so much in the big screens is because it's cheaper than creating like a center stack for each model. They can just throw it all in the screen and tack the screen on. I think that's what they're moving towards. And that's why like annoying like touch slider things to control, like when every single person says like, no, I just want a knob to like control the volume or the temperature, but they make it like a touch slider. It's because it's cheaper that way.
I also find ironic that in the era when everyone's making a big fuss about distracted driving, I have to take my eyes off the road to like change the radio station because I can't just feel for it with a tactile button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's cheaper. Okay, that's a good point. So it's cheaper to do it that way. Would you say that does that have anything to do? So Jay, you mentioned how you could just add, you could just take kind of the good parts, or the newer parts, put an electric motor in, and then not do the awful things like adding touch screens and then cheaper engine control system, things that just like will make it not work long run. And why do you think they're not doing that though?
Okay. Thus gets into, let's see.
And you don't have to be like, you don't have to like know or anything. Just like, why do you think they're not doing that?
All right. Let's see. Let me put on my leather jacket and spike my hair here. Okay. I used to think that it wasn't an unpopular opinion that, hey, things aren't built like they're used to, like they used to be, and all this tech is bad for us, and hey, maybe we need to make something simpler that'll last and people can use. Like, do we really need heated steering wheels and all this other jazz and like touchscreen climate control? Do we really need that? And I used to think that wasn't an unpopular opinion. Then, the more I'm out in the real world and I see everybody going gaga over these features, I realize, and it's weird to say, I hope I'm not like isolated, like I haven't been isolating myself, but
the whole point of the podcast is to is to express our opinions on cars. So.
I realize that not everybody is like me. They don't see, hey, this plastic here is kind of flimsy. This is a problem. Or they don't see, I don't think making your shifter a dial is a good idea. And they just see, ooh, shiny convenience feature, make life easier, And I realize, like, have I just been, like, surrounding myself with echo chambers, like,
I don't think so.
on the internet and in who I talk to that's like, hey, I want tactile controls for my, like, climate control and radio, and I don't need, like, a bunch of these other features. Have I just been in an echo chamber?
I don't know. I think to a certain extent maybe, but depending on the circles you're on in and where you go, like, I mean, you go to car shows, right? You go cruise nights. You hang out with the car crowd, right?
There's a lot of like-minded people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's at the same time, there's people who they go to the same kind of clubs. They go to the same book club every couple of weeks, or they go to the same, like, theater troupe or things like that. Like, there is a little bit of echo chambering going on there. But do you think people are? You mentioned how some people are going gaga over these features.
Maybe that was the wrong word to use, but
I know what you mean.
When
Like,
I hear people like, oh, I got this new car with this feature, oh, I can't live without it.
Do you think they're being manipulated? I'm just gonna ask it. Like, what do you think?
I think so, partially. I mean, people, succumb to it to varying degrees. But I think part of it, too, is, like, if you're, if you're in one car that doesn't have all, like, the tech stuff and the new features, and you then compare it,
It's like a keeping up with the Joneses
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
That's actually what I've been afraid of. Like, I feel like I'm dominating this conversation. I apologize.
It's your house.
Is that using these will make me go soft. And I don't mean that in a, like, your dad kind of way. Like, no, you're going,
So you're going to military school. Like,
yeah. You're too soft in that public school. But I mean, like, I'm used to driving without, like, lane change assist. The few times I've had cars with lane change assist, they piss me off so bad because I will literally not have control of the car. For like half a second, they'll just jerk me back in the lane. When I'm driving in the snow, I disable my traction control, and I wish I could disable the anti-lock brakes, because more often than none, I have lost control because of the traction control and the anti-lock brakes.
Yes. It's
Part-
a common problem.
Part of the reason is they have to tune those for the lowest common denominator driver. They have to assume you're driving going, what's this wheel in front of me do? So they have to, make it to where if you know what you're doing, it'll cause you to almost crash. But, like, what I went off on a side tangent there. My first car did not have functioning air conditioning. So
First car.
I just got used to driving without air conditioning. Then I bought an old that did not have air conditioning, had manual steering, manual drum brakes, and everything. And then I have my new car, and even though I work like industrial jobs with no air conditioning, I will not use the AC in the summer unless I have to. Because I don't want to go soft, in the sense that I don't want to get so used to it that driving around in my old car is going to be a shock, and it's going to be, like, miserable to me. And plus, just working like industrial jobs, I've gotten used to not having AC, so I guess I've built up a little bit more of a tolerance to it.
I don't think that's physically possible, but we can pretend it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's one of those things like complacency kills. When people get too used to...
Not with homeostasis. I'm gonna have to...
I think it's more about, like, if
I agree with
if your
maybe
car
other
will
points.
park itself and you just rely on that feature.
See, I
and
agree with those.
That
Yeah.
breaks, then it's like, well, I don't know how to park anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, yeah, that's the problem, I feel like, and we could do a whole thing on autonomous driving, too. But the way it's done, it has to be kind of gradual. But while it's gradual, there's definitely going to be a significant number of problems as we go along, I think. Especially with what mentioned about how, if you know what you're doing, or at the very least, if you're not a complete idiot, it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be weird, right? If like you just suddenly lose control for a half a second, even that's a long time while you're driving, even a half a second, to lose control, and it's just gonna be a kind of a rough experience for that kind of transition. I feel like they talk about levels in autonomous driving, right? Like how there's like levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and no one's actually defined these levels, but generally it's like, level 4 is like totally no human intervention. It might not even have a steering wheel. Level 1 is, things like assistance with camera or even lane change assist, maybe even considered level 2. I almost think like, do we even bother with those other like level 1, 2, and 3? Because the end goal is like level 4, right? It's supposed to be a car that drives itself. So what do you even need that transition for? Is that going to hurt more than it helps, right?
I mean, I think a lot of it too is marketing. Like, look what we can do, instead of, well, just sit tight here with the same old thing for the next 25 years while we hammer out a completely autonomous vehicle. They want to put it in, like, the automatic braking and lane assist. And
in my opinion, I feel like you don't half-ass it, right? Either you whole-ass one thing, or you don't half-ass two things, right? You whole-ass one thing is my opinion.
But part of it too is I feel like that's how they justify like putting all the money in researching it, is if you get, we'll start with like adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist and self-parking, and then okay, these work, what if we do this to make it, extend it a little bit more, what if it'll like fully stop in traffic, and you kind of keep going towards that. They're not going to do some side project for like 25 years.
Yeah, they don't want to like throw resources at it like Google or Waymo.
And part of it is one-upping, like, well, Tesla will drive itself.
Tesla just
I
did
guess,
this,
like
we
to
gotta
be
do
a serious
this too.
competitor, I guess
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to get it to drive itself too. Because the automotive journalists will definitely be sure to point that out if our electric car doesn't.
Yep. That's also a weird thing is, I was reading I don't remember what magazine article, is Motor Trend or Car and Driver, that a big problem is people overestimate the capabilities of these semi-autonomous features.
100%.
And that's also what I'm afraid of, is because they're
I'm
finding
very concerned
a
about
lot
that
of
too.
accidents are being caused by people think their cars can drive themselves, so they just, go on their phone or
Yeah.
whatever, and suddenly...
They just forget the basic rules of the road,
Mhm.
That segues perfectly into your topic about how
Yep.
cars, they may be getting too powerful.
Oh yeah, I think cars nowadays are honestly kind of getting too powerful. And I say this as I love old muscle cars but I think cars today are getting too powerful. And I think especially what I mean is, your average daily driver commuter sedan should not come with 300 horsepower and be able to go 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds. I think, well, if you buy a high performance car, you know what you're getting into. But I've seen
A midlife crisis. Sorry, I had to throw it in there.
I've seen way too many people just flooring it from every stop in their little Hyundai and driving like idiots with a little 4-door sedan. And I've noticed that driving around in my I cannot accelerate fast enough to satisfy people. On a regular suburban surface street, I think if I go 0 to 45 in 7 seconds, that's a pretty normal pace of acceleration. But inevitably, I always have a pile up of cars behind me, and the first chance they get, they're zipping around me. And I'm like,
That's so, yeah,
bruh,
I'm moving.
I'm moving, what do you want me to do?
Here, yeah.
Even better is when the speed limit on the road is 40 or 45.
It's under the amount that they're speeding past you, right?
Oh, yeah.
You can see your speed.
And I've been noticing it's been happening with an increasing amount nowadays. I had an incident where I was driving to work a couple of weeks back, and I was on the left lane of a road where the speed limit's 45, Now, our state has a really dumb law that the left lane is the passing lane no matter what. I think that's super dumb and unenforceable on surface streets. You know, oh no, officer, I was just waiting to make a left turn at this intersection. Oh, carry on, you know. It's the stupidest law.
Yeah, or they're gonna follow you for like a mile or something. Like,
Oh,
really.
yeah. Because they want that, they need
Yeah.
that ticket revenue.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably what the law was made for, was ticket revenue.
Yeah.
But, and there was this girl in this little, like, stupid Nissan Versa or something that was just riding my tail the entire time for like half a mile. And the first chance she gets, she was like, NHRA Nationals just around me. And I looked at her, she went by. Her face was completely expressionless. She wasn't like angry or anything. It was completely expressionless. And I was just like, bitch, is this how you normally drive? Like, you're not even angry or anything. You're just like nonchalant, like pedal to the metal in your little Nissan.
Well, Nissan Versa, those are all pretty slow.
Yeah.
So like,
I do not want her behind the wheel of something that has like 310 horsepower.
see, I don't know. I think maybe my line would be somewhere different because I do appreciate like when I accelerate, I don't want like it to sound like it's some like economy car straining to like get up to speed really loud and
Oh, yeah.
like I want something where it has a lot of power in reserve, which means you don't have to use it. Kind of like, that's part of it being like low stress too, and you can just kind of like waft along, get up to speed. You don't hear anything. You just kind of silently,
You respect your cars. I mean, I'm sure Jay does as well, but I feel like you definitely respect that stress.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? So what do you think is the solution to these cars that are, they're getting more power, and then there's people who are just using it wrong. Like, what do you think? Is
Here's
the
also the thing that I want to point out. What's the 0 to 60 time of like a Tesla Model S? Isn't it sub 3 seconds or something?
certain models. Well, I think the Plaid will do it in like 1.9 seconds. Like those are the ones that they'll like, put them on like a runway and like, go side by side with like a fighter jet, go like that kind of thing. Like it's like 1.9 seconds. Yeah, but most of them are like, they're all fast pretty much.
Well, see, that brings me to the thing is when the Tesla Model S, back when it was like a special car, in quotes, that's fine. Now that they're becoming more and more commonplace, you almost wonder, is it like almost irresponsible to give people who don't know how to handle it or whatever that amount of power? Secondly, what is the limit of high performance cars? Are we approaching a point where 0 to 60 times, quarter mile times are going to be like too fast, or we're approaching the limit of about what's possible with like street tires, street suspension, no roll cage? I don't want to have to go get an NHRA 10-second license to go buy a new car,
Yeah, like can the tires take it? Can rubber as a material take it?
Are we approaching a limit? And this is why my solution would be for the manufacturers. Like, I would never support a government mandate, but the manufacturers to get together and say, we need to start limiting horsepower, limiting 0 to 60 times, because A, these cars will get into the wrong people's hands, and B, what's going to happen to high performance cars if all cars start approaching
Like high performance.
this kind of high performance threshold?
Mm-hmm.
Will there be a demand for them? I mean, yeah, there's always the cool factor and the selling point of having a Camaro, but what do you do when like a Malibu can go just as fast as a Camaro?
Oh, you're
What do
right.
you
That
do?
might incentivize them to actually do it, right? That might incentivize
Sometimes they
them to
will.
make the Malibu less powerful.
They did it with the
Like
Grand
that.
National to
Yeah.
protect the Corvette.
Yeah, like historically they've done kind of like tweaks like that.
Yeah, under
But-
clock and.
I don't know, I think people put too much like importance on like the 0 to 60 time. Like I get that it's like an easy like
like a
measure
glam
that
factor.
everyone does,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like then again I've been more into like the the holistic experience of owning a cool car versus like, you know, wow, let me
This
accelerate
one
on
thing
a
you can
country
do.
road. Okay, that was really fast. Now what? Like,
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's
Yeah, I
looking
mean-
at the car, it's smelling the car,
It's owning
it's
it.
like getting in, starting it, hearing that sound, taking it all in.
Right. You can be your car can run a half a second slower than the, you know, like built up Charger down the street.
And
But
these are average times
Yeah.
too, right? They're not even.
Yeah.
It's not even like gonna be that way every time, right? You're not. How often are you going
Well,
0 to 60? When,
Yeah.
Like how
and
often
unless
are you doing
unless
that?
you're like racing too,
Like, do they have
it
stoplights
doesn't
at a
matter
highways
as
now?
much. You know, unless you're like in competition racing, you're right in the fact that the 0 to 60 time is just kind of more of a dick measuring contest. If you're
You
not
said it.
like competition racing,
Yeah.
you know.
It has no practical value. How often are you doing that? Like, you're just not doing that. Like, there's no way you're going 0 to 60 that frequently, if at all, during like your commute, for example.
Well, you know, I don't know, maybe if that girl ever gets her hands on a Tesla or something, we might all be forced to, because I don't
worry,
want to
she
get
does
I don't want to get rear-ended.
Every
The Rios-
stoplight is like a drag strip. You're just waiting for it to change. Everyone goes. You could never drive classic cars on the street. You'd have to get like the warning
That's scary.
triangle in the back.
That's scary. That's a scary
No,
thing.
you know what's even worse is the Hummer, that new electric Hummer that can go 0 to 60 in like 3 point something seconds. I know way too many like truck bros that will use that every single stoplight.
Yeah.
Like, no one is safe from those Hummers once the like lifted truck crowd gets their hands on them. It's like, all right, well, screw you, everyone in small cars. I hope you have life insurance.
Oh my goodness.
Am I wrong? I'm not bashing
You're
the
definitely.
I'm not
I think-
bashing the ones that drive irresponsibly. I am bashing the ones that drive irresponsibly.
I
But
think
you
there
know,
is something to that. That specific prediction.
and I've seen way too many southern frat boys with those trucks. I know for a fact they will be doing it with a phone in their hand.
Oh my. That's another scary thing.
Yep.
Just like behaviors
Not
that are
enough
already.
frat boys die every year, let me tell you. Like, for as irresponsible as some of them are, it's a miracle they're still alive. Like, I mean, you know, there's like Ozzy Osbourne, Keith Richards, and then there's like the frat kings. Like, how are they still alive?
Sorry, I am just typing things that we want to title this podcast. There's a couple good things in there already.
This is the trial run.
I think we've got some excellent titles already. Like, we got 36 minutes in. You can stop this, by the way. If you actually, never mind. We're just gonna pump out more gold right when it stops. So don't stop.
Let us know what y'all think of
But this
these
is
names.
the trial run, isn't it?
This is the trial run. Yeah. So 36
That's
minutes.
what we
in,
talked
you said-
about, right?
Yep.
We have bitch. Is this how you normally drive? Pedal to the metal in
Is
your
that the
little
tone we
Nissan.
want to set?
There's-
Is that
that's the clickbait
Is that
we
the
want.
tone we want to set for our podcast?
There's another one. Not enough frat boys die. That's another excellent one. I think we'll come up with like 3, and then you guys.
I
we
don't
can
know
vote
if we
for
want
which one.
the eye
Do it
of-
for the views.
the YouTube censorship eye. I
Frat
don't know if
boys.
we want to draw its attention.
Frat boys.
We're not actually gonna swear, but
Frat boys will sucker punch you, and unlike when I'm at
no, they
college,
won't.
I'm
Most frat boys are actually pretty sheltered.
unlike when I'm
Get
at
me with
college,
that.
I'm not around
No, that
when
would
I'm like
actually
going to the
trigger them. What I
grocery
just
store. So I have no protection anymore.
What I just said would actually trigger them, calling them sheltered. I feel like insulting them outright isn't what works. If you insult them indirectly or something, then they'll get mad.
Yeah.
I have a business degree. My daddy said he would hire me at his company.
See, I mean, it's not even insulting. It's just the truth. You know, like we're deviating from our original topic, which was
It's like football players. Like, I have so much respect for like athletes that go for STEM degrees because I knew so many of them in college. I have so much respect for them versus the athletes that get like, what are those joke
I don't know,
degrees?
sports tourism
Communications.
management.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
communications or
was it one
sports
of,
or not? It's a joke degree.
was it one of the Big Ten colleges that I think might have gotten in trouble? Don't quote me on this, for having their football players major in football studies or something like that.
football stuff?
That sounds like something they would do.
It doesn't even sound real. That I feel like at least call it like something fancy, like sabermetrics. Like call it something that isn't stupid. Like call it something. Oh, what do you study? I study sabermetrics. It sounds all fancy. Just a subset of statistics. But if you say, oh, I study football study, you can't even lie to your parents when you go home about what you've been studying in college.
Yeah, I have a nutrition class at the dining hall between noon and 1:15. Oh, can't be late.
Sports participation class.
Every Saturday.
That's
Nature
amazing.
is our classroom, says the football coach.
Just to be clear, we all did go to college.
We're not just talking out of our behinds here.
Well, we kind of are, but I mean, we did go to college at least, right? That's the whole point of college.
Yep.
So you can talk out of your behind and then say you
And
went
graduated.
to college. Right, and
with
say
a-
that you graduated.
A real degree.
Yes.
I have a degree. I go to work, talk out of my behind, and point to my degree. Yeah, I totally know what I'm talking about. See, I paid for that.
You see that? You see that piece of paper? Yeah, it cost me $40,000.
So wait, which one of us is the moron?
Yeah, let me tell you. I wouldn't trade my college experience for anything. That was great.
Same.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to say, I'd trade a couple moments, but I wouldn't trade the experience.
Yeah, definitely. We all had our cringy moments when we just didn't think or whatever, and it's like, oh, well, that's just growing up. But.
Yeah, I mean, great thing about being single is it's not too late to do all that stupid stuff, right? Like, really have to, like I said, guys, if we want to do something stupid or go out of country and do this nonsense, we can do that too. Now's the time to do it before
that has always been a metric for me doing my fun stuff. Like I said, I have my vintage car that I'm building.
Mm-hmm.
Is I said I want to do something like this while I'm still young and single and I don't have any other financial responsibilities or responsibilities to anyone else, so I can just go have mindless fun with it and I don't have to think about anyone else. That's always been my motivator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now's the time to do it, right? I mean, too bad we can't afford the kind of car that Dad bought recently, but we can talk about that at another time. But yeah,
I think I'm gonna go get a convertible after that.
to go get a convertible. All right,
The problem
I'll
is,
chip in for the rental.
Gonna have to patch the floor there, and
I can't build sentimental value off of this car. There's no character.
it's just a function of time.
Actually, how about Jay? Why don't you talk about your first car?
we could totally save that for another episode.
Let's save that for another episode. I feel like it's too good of a story.
I just thought of another thing you could totally do with Southern frat boys with the big lifted trucks.
Here we go with the frat boys again.
Okay. Now, I said they drive like idiots. They all drive lifted trucks, crew cab short beds. Sometimes they're diesels.
Where did you go to college again?
Somewhere down south.
Okay.
Now,
I just wanted to
let me tell you
preface that for everyone.
let me tell you how you guys make money. You go up north. You go on one of those equipment auction sites. You're going to look for an International Harvester Lodestar 1600. Do not get the 1700. You might need a CDL to drive that depending on your state.
Can you pull up a picture, or will it mess up the...
It won't mess up the recording. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go around on Saturday nights. Ooh, if you can find an old, Oshkosh truck, that's great too, an old Oshkosh truck. Now, what you do is every Friday and Saturday night, you go around Frat Row with a big chain and you start betting all those frat boys that you have a gas truck that could outpull their diesel. They will take the bait and you will win every time. When you show up with like your fifth wheel semi and they're like, ho, my Duramax is tougher than that.
You speak from experience?
I've considered buying an International Lodestar just for fun. I have never succeeded because it's completely pointless.
You don't have a use for it?
I don't have a current use for it.
You got no acreage of
I want
farm?
a Hendrickson truck. Look up one of those. I think they built them somewhere around here. Hendrickson semi.
To be fair, I don't actually know what the like pulling capacity of a Lodestar is. You might need to get something heavier that has a MV or an LV V8, not an SV. But the Red Diamond will definitely take out one of those pickup trucks. You get an older, like, 50s, early 60s International. Oh, and the best part is, things that an International Lodestar owner can say that, like, none of those guys can is like, hey man, nice rig. How much you pay for it? Oh, $500.